At this point, there are only two options: keep forcing a broken system to limp along, or redesign it. The new Forest Act framework we're proposing is not a tweak. It's not a side policy or another strategy document to be praised and then ignored. It's a full replacement of BC's forestry framework, because the existing system can no longer produce stable forests, stable jobs, or stable communities. It was developed by rural residents, foresters, and retired government staff, not by corporate lawyers. At its core, the new Forest Act, NFA, rests on three pillars: ecological integrity, community-based decision-making, and community economies. These are the organizing principles of the entire system. The NFA shifts BC away from volume-driven industrial logging and toward nature-directed stewardship, treating forests as what they actually are: critical public infrastructure. Infrastructure for clean water, flood and fire protection, biodiversity, long-term timber supply, and community stability. The NFA restructures forestry so local workers, contractors, and communities are the primary beneficiaries, not large, centralized tenure holders. Under the current system, local logging and trucking contractors are trapped. They don't control the wood. They don't control the pace of harvest. They don't control the rules they're working under. They depend on large tenure holders who can change plans, shut down operations, or walk away, leaving contractors with equipment payments and no work. By ending volume-driven tenures and replacing them with regionally governed stewardship systems, the Act shifts work back towards local contracting, local planning, and local implementation. Instead of a few large licensees controlling access to fiber, logging and restoration work is organized regionally. It's tied to ecological thresholds and long-term stewardship objectives. That means steadier work, not boom and bust contracts tied to corporate decisions made elsewhere. It also broadens the kind of work available. Local contractors are needed not just for logging, but for road rehabilitation, hydrology repair, slope stabilization, monitoring, and restoration. Work that happens year after year, not just when a cut block is approved. For example, instead of hauling low-value fiber long distances to prop up uneconomic mills, contractors could be doing continuous cover harvesting and restoration work in their own regions, work that keeps skills local and costs down. In short, the NFA framework is designed so forestry works with local capacity instead of extracting from it. Contractors don't disappear under this system. They become central to it. And this is not a theoretical reset. The transition is orderly, legal, and realistic. Under the Act, existing licenses end at their 5-year renewal dates. There are no tenure buybacks and no overnight shutdown. Over a 1 to 5 year period, the old licensing regime is dissolved and replaced. At the same time, the core forestry statutes are repealed and replaced: the Forest Act, Forest and Range Practices Act, Private Managed Forest Lands Act, and the Ministry of Forests Act. The Water Sustainability Act is not repealed. It is fully implemented and integrated to support watershed-first decision-making. This matters because right now, forestry, water, wildlife, and land use are governed by disconnected rules that often work at cross purposes. The new Forest Act fixes that by redesigning the system as a whole. The NFA implements nature-directed stewardship through a clear spatial and sequential framework: protect, restore, harvest. First, protect. Primary forests are protected in perpetuity. No industrial logging, no new industrial roads, and they're treated as irreplaceable public assets. Second, restore. This applies to degraded secondary forests, the places already damaged by roads, clear cuts, and plantations. That means road rehab, hydrology repair, slope stabilization, and proforestation where appropriate. A fair question is how restoration gets paid for. In many cases, it's paid for by redirecting money we already spend after things go wrong. Disaster cleanup, flood repair, fire response, damaged infrastructure, and subsidies that prop up a failing system. Instead of paying over and over for the consequences, the new Forest Act directs that public money into restoring forest function, stabilizing slopes, repairing water flow, removing roads, and reducing future risk. Third, harvest. Harvesting continues, but only on previously logged or roaded lands, and only where ecological thresholds allow it. The model shifts to selection-based and partial cutting, continuous forest cover, and full-cycle tree retention. Fewer roads, less fragmentation, higher structural integrity. The NFA framework prioritizes value-added manufacturing and local processing, so more of the wood cut in a region is turned into products and jobs in that region. This is not a ban on forestry. It's a redesign of how forestry is practiced so that forests remain functional while producing wood. This is where the new Forest Act breaks most sharply with the current system. Ecological integrity is not a goal to be balanced away. It's a legal constraint. Forest management must stay within ecological limits, not what markets demand and not what keeps volume flowing. In practical terms, this means forests must remain functioning systems. Connected canopy cover, stable slopes, clean cold water, living soils, and intact habitat. The NFA prioritizes forest structure, connectivity, and recovery capacity, because those are what regulate water, reduce risk, and support long-term productivity. That translates into very concrete practices: partial cutting instead of clear cutting, wide, intact riparian buffers, hydrology-led layout, minimal permanent roads, and restoration that rebuilds function, not just tree cover. Ecological integrity comes first in law, not last in planning. The second pillar, community-based decision-making, changes who holds the power. Under the new Forest Act, community forest boards are established with real authority and defined responsibilities. These boards set stewardship objectives, oversee implementation, and ensure compliance with ecological limits that are already defined in law. They're informed by independent science panels and Indigenous knowledge panels. They're not stacked with industry representatives. They're not vehicles for maximizing cut. This replaces distant, volume-driven decision-making with place-based stewardship grounded in real conditions on the land. To support that, the Act creates a Ministry of Ecosystem Integrity, with Indigenous and public leadership responsible for administering the system. An independent Forester General reports annually to the legislature. The system is built to create accountability and governance people can actually trust. The third pillar, community economies, answers the jobs question. The current system strips value from rural areas. The NFA is designed to reverse that pattern. It creates long-term employment in ecological restoration, forest monitoring, planning, and local forest offices. It reopens regional log sort markets through regional log sort yards, restoring competition and transparency. It supports local mills and value-added manufacturing instead of shipping raw materials away. It also supports tourism and ecotourism, as well as land-based livelihoods that depend on healthy forests, guiding, hunting, fishing, gathering, and recreation. This is how you replace boom and bust extraction with steadier work that lasts. Importantly, for forestry, it produces more jobs per cubic meter, because value is created through care, skill, and local processing rather than volume and speed. So this is not anti-forestry. It's about saving forestry from a system that is eating itself, burning through its best timber, destabilizing the land base, and leaving communities with fewer options every year. The forestry system BC has was built for a different era, with different assumptions and a very different land base. Those assumptions no longer hold. The new Forest Act offers a way to rebuild forestry so it actually works for forests, for water, and for the people who live here, not by pushing harder, but by changing the rules.